So we're now coming to a very special part of our 24-hour vigil, where we're going to pay tribute and in many ways bear witness to the life of Roshi Bernie Glassman. Bernie, as I think just about everyone called him, was an inspiration for One World Bearing Witness. He began something called the Auschwitz Bearing Witness Retreats 23 years ago. And very unexpectedly, Bernie passed away on November 4th. And right as we were really actually working with his organization, Zen Peacemakers, to create this event. And I was working with Rami Efal, who is joining us tonight, today, whatever time of day it is for you. Rami, do you want to turn your camera on and join us? Hi, Rami. So let me say a few words about Rami, if you don't mind. Rami became the executive director of Zen Peacemakers in 2016, and is really, I mean, he and I came in contact because I was so interested in bringing our bearing witness work together with what Zen Peacemakers has been doing, what Bernie Glassman has been doing. But I'm very excited about the vision that you have for creating a network of people who see spiritual practice and bearing witness as a foundation for activism. And that is also something that has marked your life so profoundly, the combination of deep practice and social change and social action. So I'm so pleased that you're here with us in this vigil to pay tribute to Roshi Bernie Glassman, who was your teacher, and I'm sure it's a big loss. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you, and thank your team in organizing this really wonderful event. I've been sitting with you for the last couple of hours, and it's just been powerful. And part of me wants to stay in that space and be able to speak from there and share about Bernie. So first, I would like to invoke him, and I would like to invite him to sit among us, among all of different people around this planet that are connected right now through us in this meeting, and those who are not connected with us, those who would like to be connected with us, because we are connected. So I want to invoke and invite Bernie. Bernie, come, sit with us. Take a chair. Be comfortable. And let us appreciate your life and the work and the legacy that you have left with us. And I would love to begin by something that you really, really loved. And it's a short chant that is called the Gate of Sweet Nectar. And it's really been one of the things that were so important for you in the Zen Peacemakers and the Zen Peacemakers order. And I would like to chant it for you, Bernie. And I've seen from some of the people that have joined us in the rooms, they may know that. So if you know that chant, please chant it with us. And I'll say a few words after that. Then after this, we will just watch a short interview with Bernie, just to see him and hear how he speaks a bit. And then we will sit a little into the rest of the hour, and I will close with a piece of the vows that we're taking as Zen Peacemakers. So that's just a little sense of what we're going to do for the next 40 minutes. So I'll begin with the chant.
Rami?
Yes.
As you're beginning, is there a way that you could come closer to the mic or turn your...
Is this hearing, can you hear this better?
I hear you fine, but I'm hearing from some of our people that they're having a very hard time hearing you.
Mm-hmm. Is this still the case? Are people still feeling that my voice does not carry through? 1, 2.
I hear you fine. Or do we have a message from anyone saying that it's working or not working? Because I'd like to let you go back into that beautiful flow. Then I think okay, I just got a message. What does it say? Let's see. Just a moment. It's good.
Okay.
Hearing that it's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And a word about just the shift of the energy as we move from a meditative space, very contemplative, very internal, into something that is more spoken, and a video will soon start. There was a saying in my training that, especially in meditation retreats, when you hear a talk, it's dark to the mind and radiant to the heart. So really, let's just try to stay in that space of spaciousness, and just let whatever you're hearing just wash through you. Calling out to hungry hearts everywhere through endless time. You hunger, you. I want you, the body. Calling out to hungry spirit everywhere through endless time. Calling out to hungry hearts, all the lost and left behind. Gather round and share this meal. Your joy and your sorrow I make mine. So that's one verse from the Gate of Sweet Nectar, which is a ceremony that Bernie really loved, and he composed that from an old Shingon ceremony. And it became the anthem of Bernie and the Zen Peacemakers, because it was all about feeding the hungry ghosts and all the hungry spirits. And that is something that I heard often from Bernie, how he was motivated coming into Auschwitz and coming to the streets, because he could hear, he could feel the hunger, and he wanted to feed all of them. And Bernie's legacy has covered so many fields and grounds. He fed in so many ways, whether it was just his presence on the streets, spending days and nights with the homeless people, or developing Greyston, which is a huge social enterprise, serving the first AIDS patient in New York City, and then a bakery that would hire people from prisons and jails, and then into peacemaking and peace building and working in Auschwitz and Bosnia and Rwanda. There were many kinds of Bernie's, but the one that I really appreciated was the one he always encouraged me to just let my feeding of the hungry ghost would be my own. He always encouraged me and others to just find our own way. And he termed these 3 tenets that we chanted at the end of the previous sessions: not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. He brought his levity and joy in his clowning. He went to refugee camps in Sri Lanka. And he told me, I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm just watching the kids and I'm just responding. And he did these things called plunges. In a way, he encouraged me and students to constantly see life as one big plunge, one moment to another. Arriving with this not knowing, plunging into a new situation, bearing witness to all the pieces. And this is where the gate of sweet nectar was coming out, because when we bear witness, we were bearing witness to all of the different pieces, all the different voices, all the different needs, ourselves and others, and letting the natural action that comes out of it be fresh and unmediated. So as I'm sitting just with the thought and the image of Bernie, I'm thinking of a lot of gratitude, and I'm thinking of a lot of levity and fun and joy, as well as perseverance, staying in difficulty, being curious. The video that we'll be watching is an interview that we did between him and a good friend of his. His name is Krishna Das. And Krishna Das has joined us in some of the Bearing Witness Retreat in Auschwitz and with the Native American program in 2015. And this is an interview we did with him after the Native American program. And it ends with a chant by Krishna Das. And as we finish the chant, we will just stay in that space of that gratitude to Bernie. And I'll say a few words into that silence. I'll just say a word that Bernie loved chanting, and he loved Krishna Das's chanting, and there was a tremendous love there. So a tribute to Bernie, for me included, also Krishna Das and this song, and also the chant that I chanted in the beginning of the Gate of Sweet Nectar. That was harmonized by Krishna Das. So before that, there was no melody to it in English. So this is another way that Bernie broke molds, not being the Zen master that everybody anticipated of him to be, and working with all these different traditions, inviting Sufis and Jews and Christians of all denominations into his lineage. So in that spirit of bearing witness to diversity and the oneness, let's watch the video, please.
now that you've run, you started and organized, and people ask me why I do it, what am I doing there? And so I thought it would be wonderful to have a conversation about it that I could share with people who come sing with me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have much exposure to other parts of spiritual practice. They come in through the yoga community, the asana community, hatha yoga, and then they hear the chanting and they come. So I think that's a pretty large percentage of people who don't really have any other context for it other than that. And this is from outer space as far as they're concerned. They don't understand what it's about. And so I thought it'd be good to share that, a little bit about the process with them in the practice.
Yeah. The first time I went to Auschwitz, it was about 22 years ago. We've been doing retreats there. This would be the 20th year that we're doing retreats. But the first time I went, about 22 years ago, when I walked into Birkenau, I could just feel all the spirits crying out, wanting to be remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And so right away I said, I've got to do that. I've got to come here and sit and be with those spirits. And then it struck me also pretty much right away that there were all kinds of spirits there, because that was a place, many Jews were killed, but gypsies and Catholics and intellectuals and gays and people with handicap, so many different kinds. And so it felt like I should try to bring as many different kinds of people there to be together and to see how we can deal with each other. Because that was a place where the way you dealt with differences was you killed the differences.
Right.
But to sit with each other and to do that. It was only a few years ago that it struck me that another very important piece of what we now call Bearing Witness Retreats is that it's a way of helping to reduce our fear. So we're taking people to places where their first reaction is fear. I can't go there. That's horrible, man, or whatever. And in the Buddhist tradition, the word for compassion, the Chinese word for compassion, has two radicals. One is compassion in the way we normally think of it, and the second means removal of fear. So compassion works. The bodhisattvas work, and compassion is to remove fear. And these Bearing Witness Retreats are doing that. And like I had a couple of years ago in my council group, there was we do way of council every morning, and in my council group there was a German woman who first we introduced ourselves, and she said she'd been thinking of coming for 15 years, but she was afraid to. Her grandfather was SS and ran a camp. She was afraid she would meet a Jew or a Pole. So this was a woman, I'd say in her 50s, and for 50 years has been avoiding Jews and Poles out of fear that she would run into. And in my group also was a Polish guy who lives in Krakow, and he said for 10 years he'd been thinking of coming, but he was afraid. He was afraid he would meet a German. So for all his life, he was in his 40s, he was avoiding Germans out of fear. After 4 days, they were hugging.
Yeah.
So it meant that the spectrum of life that they were now encountering was increased tremendously. It was decreased out of fear. And that's true for all of us, I think, that there's certain things that we're afraid of and we stay away. So we're not in touch with that part of life. And so Bearing Witness Retreats have that effect. Same we do. We go live on the streets, street retreats. They're the same thing. People are afraid to live in the streets. They're afraid. And that manifests when they walk in the streets and they see a homeless person, they'll turn away. They're afraid to meet them. They're afraid to say hello. Forget about the money part. They're afraid to talk to them. And anybody who's gone on a street retreat, when they see somebody homeless, they will say, "How you doing? What's your name? How you feel?" You know, that fear is gone. Now to go beyond the fear and to celebrate in the diversity of life, that's beautiful. So when you come and you call all the hungry spirits to come and you so we all talk about the interconnectedness of life, the oneness of life. But if we look carefully at ourselves and see how many aspects of life we shy away from or won't come in contact, and then try to figure out why, and I think the biggest reason is fear. Fear. So that's how these Bearing Witness retreats, well, I don't know if they started because of that, but that's, we're enlarging the numbers. And
there was, I had a lot of fear before my first retreat. I thought, how am I going to deal with this? Just the fear of being in that place where so much suffering happened and so much torture and so much inhumanity was manifest. I just didn't know what was going to happen to me, So just to go and go through the process and the practice of being in the camp, I'm very freeing from that fear that I had, just on that simple level. And then to be talking about fear, how much fear there must have been in the camp at the time of the during the war. The atmosphere was extraordinary.
And if we go to, we just finished, we were just together in South Dakota in the Black Hills, Native American, with the Lakota folks. And the fear, the elders went to boarding schools run by the church, Catholic Church, and the fear that must have existed there, because if they spoke any Lakota, they were beaten up. If they wore any traditional clothes, they were beaten up. And from what I understand is now in one of those in that school, there's a track where people run around, and underneath that is graves of children that died there. So they had a reason to be afraid, but that fear permeates everywhere. That's the other reason for these Bearing Witness retreats is our ignorance, which I think that is most of the non-native Indians that came had no idea of what went on in our own country and what we did.
And still doing.
And are still doing. And why we have these ignorant things, again, in a way, I think it's fear. We don't want to know, because so it's fear, it's guilt, but we don't want to know. So we try to stay away. So what I found for myself, maybe about 25 years ago, actually, that I was in a place that in my practice, I needed to go to places where I didn't want to know what was going on, where I felt I had to stay away, or I was afraid of it. And so those are the places I went. Now, in the old Buddhist traditions in India and in Tibet, they had what they call charnel practices, where you would go to the cemeteries and sit with the spirits that are coming in. It's a very similar thing, and a way of dealing with our own insecurity, our own fears, our own wanting to be ignorant of certain things and not really grasping that that means that we are not connecting with all of that which is us. I mean, we're all one, we're all interconnected. So if we're staying away from a large part, in a way we're staying away from a large part of ourselves, and there has to be practices to bring those connections. And then I also feel very strongly that there's got to be practices that celebrate that. And those are bhakti practices and chanting practices. I mean, there's many practices to do that, but I think they take on another significance if it's also linked with bringing in the shadow or the places we don't want to know about and we don't want to touch.
Sure.
So we make a good duo, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are very attached to the way they live. Like one time, remember when I sang in, you asked me to sing it was in the women's, no, it was in the men's, one of the men's barracks. And so I sat down there in the mud, and one guy just exploded, remember? And he ran out of there, remember that?
I do.
Yeah, and I was...
He's a student of mine.
Oh, was he? Oh, he must have been a good student.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to let go of something, right? I mean,
right.
So
he came back. He didn't want to open up.
He didn't want to open up. He was there with the suffering, but he didn't want to. He couldn't let go of that. He had no. He was attached to his suffering. I guess you could say. I mean,
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And we put a lot of emphasis on our first tenet in the Zen Peacemakers, not knowing, being open and being open to everything. You know, it's very difficult. And so he had studied that, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He was trapped by his conditioning of what should be, instead of being open to what is. And another case like that was sort of interesting is 2 years ago. We always go to the women's barracks. There's a women's barrack where women were put when they couldn't work anymore. And they were put in there, and they weren't given food, and they were just left there to die. And so we always went there. And this 2 years ago, we decided that we would have the men go into a men's barrack and the women into this women's barrack. We did that, and when the men went in, Ohad, who's a rabbi from Israel and plays guitar, started playing some Hasidic tunes, and we were singing. There was somebody that got really pissed off. You know, how are you singing here? This is Auschwitz. You know? And then we were supposed to meet up with the women, but we went on. We were singing, dancing, and it went on so long that it was now lunchtime. So most people went to outside the camp to the trucks to get their soup, but some, including the rabbi, went to the women's barracks to see what was going on there. It turned out that one of the men was engaged to one of the women that was in the barrack, and they went. And she saw them coming, and she said, "Why don't we?" They were going to get married in a couple of weeks in Prague or somewhere. And she said, "Why don't we get married here?" He said, "Here?" She says, "Yeah, why not?" And they asked about that. "Oh, can we do that?" And he said, "Do you really want to do it?" And they said, "Yeah, we want it." He said, "Yeah, I can do that." And he married them. Now, there were a number of people. There was a woman that was very upset about the women dancing and whatever. She was an Orthodox Jew. And then I pointed out a few days later, in the evening, the last evening, Friday night, we ended, I pointed out that most of the people in those barracks were from the Hasidic tradition. And a wedding in the Hasidic tradition, the men are separate from the women, and they're both dancing. They're singing and dancing. And then at some point, the rabbi leads the groom to where the bride is. And they get married.
Just what happened.
And I said, that's what happened here. And can you imagine the delight of the people that were here?
Yeah.
And seeing a wedding in their tradition happening right in their space.
Yeah.
You know, it was... And so both of those people that were so upset said, wow, yeah, why were you so upset? We're part of history making here. But again, because they were afraid, they were closed.
Yeah. And even so, being closed and afraid, that's part of the programming they received from the culture about this is how we have to live with this.
Yeah.
We have to be closed, we have to be afraid, we have to only be unhappy about it. Well, I remember when you gave me those 8 lines to work on from the
Gate of Sweet Nectar.
The Gates of Sweet Nectar. The actual translation, as you gave it to me, was the last line was, all of your sorrow, I make it mine, which is the Bodhisattva, you know, taking on the sorrows of the world. So when I brought that to you, you said, oh, I want your joy too. You got to put that in there. So I changed it though, your joy and your sorrow.
Yeah.
But it's more inclusive. It's more,
Right.
you know, the first time I was at Auschwitz, I had my harmonium with me because I had been singing in Europe. So I took it into the women's barracks. And I thought, I will do some Devi Puja here. I will sing to the goddess, the perfect woman, you know, that embodies all women. So I got in there and I put out the harmonium and I was just about to sing. And I thought to myself, well, first of all, it was so full. I don't think I've ever sang to more people than the beings I felt in that barracks, that empty barracks. I don't have this kind of experience, but I just felt it was so full. So I asked them, what should I sing to you? And what came back? They wanted me to sing to their children. So I sang Gopala, which is the child Krishna. And I felt they felt such joy from that, because they were remembering their children and the love that they have with their children. It was a very beautiful experience, completely unexpected.
Yeah.
So let us sit a bit. With the sound and the sights that we've just seen and heard. We've heard a lot about the camp, but the camp is really here now. It's in our lives, it's in our work, it's in our families, it's in the streets. It's with the refugees living in tents scattered across continents. Same camp. And the people we ignore on the street. The camp is also a place of great beauty. Nature rejuvenates and generates color and life between the cracks of the red bricks and the ruins. There's opportunity. I'd like to finish with a quick read of a piece we call Day of Reflection that Zen Peacemakers read in different retreats. It's really a way to dedicate what Bernie has put forth, the intentions, all evil karma ever committed by me since of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, speech, and mind. Now I atone for it all. Now, being of the purity of my body, speech, and mind, I commit myself to observing this day of reflection. For the coming day, I take refuge in the Buddha, the awakened nature of all beings, in the Dharma, the ocean of wisdom and compassion, the Sangha, the harmony, the Buddhas and Dharmas. For the coming day, I commit myself to not knowing the source of all manifestations and seeing all manifestations as the teachings of not knowing. I further commit myself to bearing witness by allowing myself to be touched by the joys and pain of the universe. I invite all hungry spirits into the mandala of my being and commit my energy and my love to the healing of myself, the earth, humanity, and all creations. So in the last few moments of this period, let's connect again with that silence. Invoke heart of gratitude to Bernie, to what he left us with. Also acknowledging his family, his children. And how an effect of one person can ripple through so many people. So thank you, everyone. And let's just sit in silence for the next couple of minutes. Hi, Bernie. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. You brought deep sorrow, joy, and gratitude in what you shared. And it is at once bearing witness to all of it. So thank you. And for you and the peacemakers and in all of our efforts, may they flourish, and may we bring this sorrow, joy to to our human consciousness in a deeper way, rather than being identified with the sorrow or desperate for the joy or in the joy and afraid of sorrow. So thank you. Thank you very much.